welcome back to Food Decoded, where I help you to reset your relationship with food, lose weight, keep it off, eat healthy, and live healthy. My name is Yemi Fadikpe. I'm so happy that you stopped by, especially because today we are continuing our discussion on diabetes. In the last video, we looked at the risk factors. In today's video, we will now be talking about healthy eating tips, because this is Food Decoded at the end of the day. So we're going to be talking about healthy eating tips to help you to prevent diabetes if you don't have it, and if you're already living with the condition, tips that can help you to manage your blood glucose level. So, as the TV people will say, don't touch that dial. If you haven't subscribed, do so now, and please determine to share this video with your friends and families. As is always the case, it is impossible for me to be able to give example of every African or every Caribbean food. So I will be citing a few examples using food products that I know cuts across several cultures, but I want you to pay attention closely to the principles that I'm sharing, so that even if I don't mention a food that is consumed in your country, you would know how to apply these principles to manage your condition or prevent or reduce your risk factors. The first healthy eating tip for preventing or managing diabetes is to cut down on your consumption of highly processed carbohydrates and replace those with their whole high fiber equivalents. For example, things like white rice, things like white bread, you can replace those with brown rice, whole wheat flour, whole wheat bread, or whole grain. Generally speaking, move away from highly processed carbohydrates and switch to high fiber carbohydrates. That's one of the first principles. For those of us who consume a lot of basmati rice within our cultures, it would be nice for you to hear that basmati rice is actually also available over the shelf in the brown basmati rice version. Now, if you are already living with type 1 diabetes, there is an additional clause for you when it comes to consumption of carbohydrates. You need to count your carbohydrates. This is a group of people where food calorie counting is an essential part of your treatment. Depending on your insulin levels that you inject, or whichever way your doctors have told you to use it, the amount of carbohydrates you need to consume to get the right balance would vary. And your diabetes management team would have told you how much carbohydrates you would need, how to discover when it's high or low, and how to regulate the amount. If that has not happened, please speak to your diabetes management team and ask them to show you or tell you how to count your carbohydrates and how to get the right amount of glucose depending on the different levels of insulin that you're getting. I'm assuming that you will be monitoring your insulin levels regularly, so that you can then start to do that yourself and manage your diet. The second healthy eating principles when you're trying to manage diabetes or prevent it is to cut down on your salt intake. I know you'll be surprised because everybody always only talks about sugar. Yeah, you also need to cut down on your salt intake if you're trying to manage or prevent diabetes. If you're not sure how to interpret or know which foods are high or low in salt, check out my videos on how to interpret food labels. The third healthy eating tip for this condition is to eat more beans, more pulses, more legumes in place of red and processed meats. I'm sure you're going to be wondering, what is all this about? This is blood glucose. Remember, in my last video, we said that your risk of having diabetes is higher if you have high blood pressure. And salt and red meat and processed meat are food products that tend to result in high blood pressure. So you can start to see how all of these things connect. They're all interwoven. You can also boost your meals around that area. Instead of red meat, to go for fish, to go for white meat, chicken. The next tip is to eat more fruits and vegetables. Now, I know you will say, what about sugar? Because when I was young, my dad had diabetes, and every time, because I was doing a degree in food science, anytime he has one food, he will be like, Yemi, how much sugar is in this one? I'll be like, Dad, I can't know the sugar level in every food in the world. in this small head of mine. Why now? Now, eating fruits is not bad for you if you're trying to prevent diabetes or living with diabetes. If you remember in my last video, I did say I was not calling this blood sugar. I was calling this blood glucose. What is actually causing your diabetes is blood glucose, not the natural sugar that is in fruits, which is called fructose. So having fruits is not a problem if you're running away from diabetes or if you're living with the condition. Of course, like we said in the earlier point, if you have type 1 diabetes and you need to count your carbohydrates levels and match it with insulin, yes, that principle still applies irrespective of what food it is. If you want to find out more about what kind of fruit juices or fruit juice products are good for you, check my video that is titled A Deep Dive into Fruits and Juices, something like that. I will link it above. The next tip is for you to choose healthier fats. So switch from things like hydrogenated fats like margarines, switch from things like palm oil, and start to choose healthier fats like olive oil. Start to eat things like avocado, sunflower oil, rapeseed oil. Those are better oils than palm oil, than coconut oil in your cooking, than palm kernel oil. So make that adjustment. And also reduce the amount of oil that you're using in your cooking, irrespective of whether it's good oil or bad oil, and start to do things more like steaming and baking and grilling instead of deep frying. Of course, there's no sugar in oil, but because unhealthy oils lead to weight gain, which is a risk factor for type 2 diabetes. So you need to start to make those connections. Now, the next one, which I believe you already expect, is to cut down the added sugar in your foods. If you're going to continue to drink carbonated beverages and all of those drinks, go for the sugar-free version. I'm not saying that everything sugar-free is healthy, but at least between the sugar full and the sugar-free, at least you got one thing less in the sugar-free option. And again, it is not the sugar itself that is causing the diabetes, remember. It is the sugar leading to overweight or the sugar leading to breakdown of glucose. It is still the insulin that is still behind all of this. So the most important thing for me as far as sugar is concerned is switch to sugar-free. Stop adding sugar if you can and switch to sweeteners. There are natural-based sweeteners like stevia out there that you can actually use to bake, you can actually use in drinks. Now, if you are living with type 1 diabetes, there is a caveat to this. You might be one of those patients who have regular hypo. And in this case, you will need to actually have sugar consumed. So this is where people that say, oh, sugar is not good for you if you have diabetes, this is where it gets tricky. If you have type 1 diabetes, you would have been told, depending on how often or how bad your hypos levels get to, you will need to have sugar. Some diabetes patients that I know would keep jelly babies, sweets in their pockets for when they have hypo so that they can quickly get that sugar directly into their bloodstream. So it is important that you discuss this with your diabetes management team. Let them guide you onto what amount and how you can do this safely. The next tip is to choose healthier snacks. Healthier snacks are those snacks that are minimally processed, that are not high in sugar, high in fat, high in saturated fats, high in calories, or high in salt. And we know why. Even though nuts is good for you from the fiber point of view, when they start adding all of this to it, it reduces the nutritional quality and it exposes you more to health risks. Instead of things like crisps, like chocolates, like sweets, you can choose unsweetened yogurts, you can choose unsalted nuts and unsalted snacks, you can choose wheat-based crackers and things like that. So it's not like you cannot snack, it's just switching and making those choices from high sugar to low sugar, from processed flour to unprocessed whole grain. Just the things that I've said so far, apply that again when you're choosing your snacks. The next tip is to cut down on your alcohol consumption. If you must drink alcohol, do it sensibly, but you definitely need to be in a position where you are constantly reducing the amount of alcohol that you consume. Alcohol is very, very high in calories. and makes it difficult for you to lose weight. And we know that weight is a risk factor for type 2 diabetes. If you are on diabetes medication, drinking alcohol on an empty stomach can actually increase the frequency of your hypos, because you suddenly have high and it just crashes, high calories and it crashes. So please monitor your alcohol consumption. If you cannot avoid it, reduce it drastically. The next tip is to choose unsweetened yogurt and dairy products. Fermented dairy products have been found to actually reduce the risk of type 2 diabetes. But what I would say is, when you're choosing your fermented dairy product, so like yogurt is a fermented dairy product, cheese is a fermented dairy product. And when I talk about cheese, I'm not only talking about cheese that we find in developed countries. There are a lot of fermented dairy products and cheese in Africa. Things like kefir, things like wara, things like sosak, things like inyame. You can include all of this in your diet. Now, if you are somebody like me who likes a lot of yogurt, you please make sure that you're switching from the full cream, full fat, or all of those flavored yogurts, and go for the natural low-fat yogurt, natural fat-free yogurt, natural Greek-style yogurt, so that at the same time as bringing in fermented dairy products into your diet, you are also managing your weight. The 10th and final tip I will be sharing today is, don't rely on supplements. Get your minerals and vitamins from food. There is no evidence that supplements reduce the risk of diabetes. A lot of people slash claims of diabetic food, diabetic this or that on foods. It is a bit tricky. Try to eat healthy so that you get all your vitamins and minerals naturally from food. If you are living with diabetics, don't bother yourself about diabetics foods, food labeled diabetic. Actually, in some parts of the world like the UK, it has now been banned that nobody can label food as diabetic foods, because we know that it is a fad. There is no evidence to suggest that eating foods that are labeled diabetic foods makes any difference to your health status versus eating healthy. So the focus when you're either managing diabetes, living with diabetes, is to eat healthy. Apply the principles I've shared above and you will be fine. Thank you so much for coming. If you need more information, please check out the website for Diabetes UK. It doesn't matter where you live in the world, you can access this website. They've got a rich wealth of resources on preventing diabetes, on managing diabetes, recipes from different parts of the world that can help you to manage diabetes. If you can't find the link, I believe I've dropped the link in the description, but please reach out to me and I will signpost you to that website. Thank you once again for coming. Click on the subscribe video and don't forget to share these videos with your loved ones. I'll see you in the next video when we're going to be breaking the myths around diabetes. Bye-bye.